Hi guys, welcome to Finish Awesome Fridays. Today we're going to go over the second phase of the 3 layers of awesome for training. Okay, today is structure. So this one will be broken down into 2 videos over 2 weeks. The first part of it, we're going to start explaining sort of the first aspects of it, and then this last phase here, this third one, is actually going to be its own video, because what I personally believe is when I try and explain this, and the way I'm going to explain it is probably a bit more detailed than one video can handle for all 3 aspects. Okay guys, so today we're going to talk about dynamic mobility and the energy pathways, and then the next video we'll be talking about periodization and how to structure your workouts for your goals. So the main difference there, so for your foundational levels, we talked about the 3 aspects of training that are obviously fundamental to work through from there. So whether you come into training for the first time in say 10, 15 years, maybe you've not trained since, you know, PE at school, you know, I've had that before, so you know, you will take your training from a very basic level and start building it from there. Maybe you're more experienced and you have done training in and out for sort of months and years, but I still recommend starting at this area. Even people like myself that trained for quite a long time, if I was to take you in at first time, I would introduce you to the very basic structure of the training first, because what we want to make sure is that you get used to the sort of style of training we do here at UP Performance. So if you're, you know, a fairly unfit level and you've come right from the beginning, obviously, you know, a very basic session is going to sort of smash you, and that's going to be enough, you know, to get the fitness element and get you raising that level of fitness from there. If you've been used to training before, though, it gets you used to the style of training we do, and obviously, you know, I could probably put you a bit more advanced and sort of work a bit more towards it after, say, you know, 4 to 6 weeks. We can start turning that up straight away. Whereas an untrained individual, you know, it could take anywhere up to 6 months, maybe even a year, to get you to a level where you feel confident enough to then start pushing the training beyond that initial stage. So that is the fundamentals. As I say, the foundation, it's the basics. It should be something you do at all times, any program. Even when you start getting a bit more advanced and start talking a bit more or thinking a bit more about the training, those fundamentals never change. What are the fundamentals? Mobilization, doing that 3 to 7 times a week, or even more if you can, you know, more than 7 times a week if you can. But I would just say, as long as you're doing it, you know, once every other day, that is a good start. And if you can do it every day, fantastic. You know, that's going to get you the best results and make you feel the best that you can. Okay, so mobilization, massively important. In the terms of the training, you want to make sure you hit the 4 pillars of functional movement. Okay, so the push and pull, the raising and lowering of the center of mass, so squatting and deadlifts and lunges and stuff like that. Rotations, so swinging, striking, you know, sort of moving around in a rotational manner is going to be good from there. And locomotion, so going from point A to point B, so crawling, walking, carrying, anything like that, running, rowing, anything that's going to get you from point A to point B should be implemented into your training. Okay, so those 4 aspects are important to hit. And then I introduce you to metabolic power. So metabolic power is what we call, you know, other people call it metabolic conditioning, other people call it, you know, circuits, other people, you know, there's millions of other words for it, but we call it metabolic power here at UP Performance. Not just to be different, but because that's what I believe it is. It's the ability to produce power or produce force under fatigue. So you'll start introducing short, low-skilled movements with conditioning movements and blend them together to make these circuits that are going to build conditioning, build the heart and lungs, build the muscles, and start getting you moving more frequently and more explosively, but under control. So as I say, it's low-skilled, making sure that people are getting those fitness sort of markers hit, as well as doing everything else from there. So if you're doing those things in a basic structured workout and doing that frequently, that's going to build a much better body, and most people will be happy just to stay within that realm and maybe tweak it a little bit, but you don't have to go much further than that to get you know, great results, you know. And I always say the good, the great and the awesome, but actually with the training aspect of things, you know, you could push that element, that foundational element, to a very great or awesome stage. You know, you don't have to, it's not just, you know, not just good and that's it, and you won't get any great results from it. You know, if you're doing those things frequently and consistently, you'll get great results. That's the great thing about training. It's you know, sort of that way inclined, because you always have to progress your training. You always have to push forward anyway. So you're always going to get great results and always going to get a better body. So with the structural side of things now we introduce some elements that make it a bit more technical, and we start going a bit more into the sports science side of things, okay? So it's something that most people don't have an interest in. So, you know, unlike me and other fitness professionals and other people that love the fitness industry, we can geek out on sports science all day, and we love reading about, you know, the latest research and the latest sort of findings. but for most people, just doing something consistently is the issue. Okay, so you just want to train and just, you know, feel good and work hard from there. So that is good enough for most. This stage now, we can start bringing in other aspects, and you start understanding why we do what we do. So the first aspect, the mobility, starts to change ever so slightly. So though I would recommend obviously doing 3 to 7 days a week of mobility work, what we start introducing in the structural side, as you get a bit more used to the mobility work and move a bit better, is dynamic mobility. Now, dynamic mobility is obviously mobility drills that are done with movement. Okay, so the reason that I wouldn't get someone right from the start doing dynamic mobility is because they haven't sort of learnt their body, how it moves and everything else from there. So start to getting them into sort of walking lunge to reaches and all the rest of it from there could be quite, one, daunting, but two, they probably can't get into those positions anyway, because you know, a lunge in itself would probably be quite difficult for most people to sort of get into properly. So the first things first is you start learning in a more static structure so that they can obviously learn the positions and where they need to be, and then you start bringing through more consistent sort of movement patterns, sort of intensifying it. So it's the you know, sort of the beginnings to the end. So this one is a little bit more advanced, but nothing crazy. Once people are used to where they should be sort of squeezing the muscles, where they should be feeling the stretches, then they can start introducing dynamic mobility. So where I would introduce dynamic mobility mostly would be in form of warm-ups. So the reason we do that is because, one, obviously it gets the mobility work done, but obviously it does it in a movement pattern, so you can bring it into a warm-up circuit or into a warm-up workout and actually get great benefits, get your mobilization done, but it's not sort of just sitting there stretching and just sort of looking at the clock, waiting for 2 minutes to stretch one muscle, then looking at the other one and doing that and thinking, oh good, you know, because that's generally how the warm-ups start. But when you start getting used to it, and as you start training more and more with me at UP Performance especially, you'll notice when we start, we'll do a little static stretching portion of our warm-up before moving on to something else. But once you start getting used to it, we then start bringing in more dynamic stuff. So then we start, you know, opening the hips and opening the shoulder girdle and activating the upper back and doing all that in a circuit fashion. So it's a bit more enjoyable. It's a bit more sort of, you know, less sort of waiting for the next thing to come about. You're moving, you're getting about, you're warming up the body. So it's a great time to bring it into there. Another thing as well is active rest. So when you're at home doing your mobilization drill, when you start doing dynamic mobility work, it almost becomes a workout in itself. So what you can do is you do a 15-20 minute mobility drill, dynamic mobility drill, and then you come out of it and you might get a little bit of a sweat on, you'll be feeling looser and more limber, and that's the idea. So dynamic mobility then becomes much more important. And as I say, it's something that you can then start using day to day instead of the static mobility. I still recommend stretching and getting into those positions and holding positions and stuff like that, but this stage now you can start introducing the dynamic mobility and it becomes much more fun and becomes much more sort of, you know, becomes a new thing, and that's good, because then that keeps your interest going and keeps that consistency going from there. So I will be going over dynamic mobility drills in the Movement Mondays and the Workout Wednesdays. I will start introducing dynamic warm-ups and stuff, so that you know what to do before you start any of our sessions, and that gives you an opportunity then to actually start practicing some of these movements. Okay, so that will be something we'll introduce from there. So that is the main thing about mobility that will change, nothing else really. But the training now, though we touch on these things in the first phase, it's not something you have to concern yourself with. But now we're going to the structural phase. Now we're going into the phase where actually I want you to start understanding your training a little bit more in detail. I want you to start, you know, utilizing the sort of the different aspects of training. This now becomes fairly important. So sports science bit comes in. Okay, guys. So thinking caps on. I'll try not to make it too complicated. Okay. So there's 3 main energy pathways you're going to work for. Okay, the creatine phosphate, the anaerobic and the aerobic pathways. Now they've got many different names, and many people will probably, you know, shout through their screens, sort of saying, "Oh, there's this pathway," or "It's not called that, it's called this," or whatever. But that's basically how it works. That's a very basic structure of it. Okay, you start off with your creatine phosphate system, then the energy pathway will start working into the anaerobic system, and then it goes finally into the aerobic system. So if I use an exercise bike as my example, okay, you sit on the bike, you start going as hard as you can. Now what will start happening is the body for 10-15 seconds will kick into that creatine phosphate system. It's explosive, it's hard work, the body is working with that energy pathway. But as soon as you get to the sort of 15-20 second marker, what starts happening is you start feeling the burning sensation start kicking into your quads, okay, or your hamstrings or your glutes or wherever you may start feeling the energy being used from, okay. This is now the anaerobic system, okay, the lactic acid system. What happens is your muscles, inside the muscles, we hold an energy source called glycogen. Okay, glycogen is basically the sort of it's glucose, basically derived from the carbohydrates we eat from our food, and that is the main energy source that we use in our bodies. Okay, so that is the glycogen in the muscles from there. What starts happening is the body starts utilizing the glycogen as energy. Okay, so it starts taking the glycogen as the energy to use for the muscles. It produces a waste product called lactic acid. Lactic acid basically is in the muscles and starts getting pumped out, and obviously it doesn't want it to stay in the muscle because obviously it's quite uncomfortable, so the body starts pumping out of the muscles. But what starts happening is you start producing more lactic acid than your body can pump out. Okay, so what starts happening then is the lactic acid starts building up in the muscle, and you start getting that burning sensation in the muscles from there. So as I say, it starts happening around the 20-second, 30-second marker. You start feeling that, okay? Now you can push in that area. The intensity obviously has to start coming down. You'll obviously, that means you'll start slowing down, but you can still push it as hard as you can. The body is fighting and fighting, and you're producing more lactic acid, and it's getting really, really tough. And so what will start happening is your body naturally will start slowing down from this stage anyway. But that is the zone you're in from there. Then, as you go past sort of the 2-minute mark, if you're still going, you'll notice your body will you'll really have to start slowing down to keep that effort going. You won't be able to stay in that high-end, high-speed sort of area where the legs are burning. It won't allow you to do it. The body will naturally start fatiguing to a point you'll either fall off the bike and your muscles will be throbbing and sore, or you'll have to slow down to keep that duration going from 2 minutes onwards. So once you go from 2 minutes onwards, you then have to start kicking into the aerobic pathway. So what starts happening is the body starts utilizing the oxygen that you're breathing in as its energy source and going through from there, and also mobilizing fat stores and using fat as an energy source as well from there. Now that's why most people think it's the best one to work on, because obviously you're in the fat burning zone, as they like to call it, as you go into that aerobic pathway. But it's not necessarily true. It's a bit more complicated than that. But that's generally where it goes. So then the body will start utilizing the oxygen system as its energy and breaking down the ATP from there. Okay, so that is a quick, brief description of how that would work with an exercise bike. Now, how we use it in training and how I would use it in training from here, you've got the 3 energy pathways from there. So this sort of creatine phosphate system is power and strength based stuff. Okay, so that is maybe explosive work, jumping onto a box, throwing an object, swings, sort of high energy, or maybe even sort of starting with the basic Olympic lifting. Okay, so explosive work. Strength work, so you're looking at squatting, pressing, deadlifts, you know, so those sort of strength exercises will work in the creatine phosphate system as long as you're working them around about the 1 to 5 rep marker, okay? So that's important in our training, obviously, to get stronger. The anaerobic system is where I like to spend a lot of time in because I believe that's the most beneficial all round to fitness. But that is when you're going to start working sort of higher rep muscle building work. So this is where you're going to start doing sort of, you know, your flies, your kickbacks, your throws, your, you know, anything that's going to be, you know, up to sort of 6 to 12 reps where you're going to get that lactic acid pump, that sort of as I say, pump in the muscles. That is going to be the area that you're going to work from there. And then your aerobic pathway, obviously longer base duration stuff. So you're looking at higher endurance work with a barbell, or anything that's going to last longer than a couple of minutes on terms of aerobic work. Okay, so you want to make sure that in your training, all 3 aspects are trained all the time. Okay, even if, as you're going to explain in the next phase, you'll have a particular goal to get really strong, to get really big, to get really, you know, lean, whatever that goal may be, all 3 energy pathways need to be worked at all times. That is the most important aspect of training that we do here at UP Performance. We don't believe that, you know, you should become a specialist in any one area unless there is a goal you're setting for yourself to do a particular task. Okay, so those 3 energy pathways, that's a nice, hopefully basic introduction to those and help explain what exactly that is. So in the next video, I will go through more specifically the periodization of it. So periodization is how you break your training down from week to week, month to month, year to year. Okay, so that's all that means. So that is what we're going to just talk about in the next video. It shouldn't be too long, too taxing, but it will start explaining how we utilize and manipulate these to get our goals that we want. Okay, hope you enjoyed that video, guys. Nice and short, but just briefly goes into that bit more detail. So the main aspects you're taking from it, Dynamic mobility we start introducing now, so movement and mobility at the same time into your warm-ups, into your routines. That's going to help sort of, you know, get those warm-ups more dynamic in terms of it, as the name, and also get your body mobilized and make mobilization a bit more interesting, a bit more fun. And then we start looking at the energy pathways. We start making sure that we are hitting all those areas. Okay, at the very basic level, it's not as important. You know, we will hit all those areas because that's just the way the training works. But now you start understanding that I've got, you know, these, when I'm doing my training, I'm making sure that all three pathways are going to be manipulated in some point of the training. Okay, that is that. I hope you enjoyed it. As I say, guys, I'll see you for the next video. Have an awesome weekend. Just be awesome. Catch you later.